am Ruth. I think my first I would present myself first as a wife and mother, because I think a mother is a very important component of who I am. I became a mother at a young age, and I have 5 children, 4 daughters and a son. So motherhood or family or being a partner and being a mother is an important part of who I am. I am a neuroscientist and a clinical psychologist that my research focuses on, if we can broadly say it, on the science of love, on the neurobiological systems and processes like synchrony that enable us to form and maintain close relationship in my real life. So in fact, I was a mother before I was a scientist, but I studied through being a mother. I think the notion of synchrony was very helpful to my parenting, knowing that you need to be constantly attentive, present, attentive, looking very closely at the communication that your child is trying to have or what's behind it. And then maturing. My kids are older now, so maturing from the time they are very young, uh, with expanding the synchrony as the children grow. It becomes more symbolic, it becomes more mutual, it becomes more respectful, it becomes more empathic as children grow. But the basic idea of synchrony that social moments are very precious. Well, it's just like synchrony, synchrony that you, like the videos you saw in 1 day old infants, and then in 3 months old mother infant interaction. So in the beginning, it's about behavior, and then it expands and it includes. My career went basically the same way. I first studied the behavioral part of synchrony and then added the autonomic part and the clinical part. And I personally, I had 2 tracks for graduate study, one track in neuroscience and another track in clinical psychology. So I have 2 graduate degrees, one in neuroscience and one in clinical psychology. But they came together, and I realized as time went on that the research is not guided by technique. Like you'd see now, neuroscience center, one lab does fMRI, and one lab does hormone, one lab does molecular biology, and our lab was not guided by technique. It was guided by the question: what enables us, from the bacteria we carry in our body to the meaning system that we give our culture and religion scriptures, and everything in between, what enables us to be part of social life, to love, to nurture relationships, to be part of community, to develop social abilities like collaboration and empathy and theory of mind and understanding others' intent.
Nobody of us are Leonardo da Vinci. We need integration different.
No, not Leonardo da Vinci at all in what he was able to produce. Leonardo da Vinci actually, there was a book pretty recently published about him. He was able to hold all knowledge that was available in his time, plus being a painter, and that's to the side. But as far as knowledge, the men held all knowledge, philosophical knowledge, chemical knowledge, mathematical knowledge, scientific knowledge, physical knowledge that was available at his time. I don't think there is any one human right now, but you model yourself after that. I think that generally it's a terrific idea, but it has to be done with wisdom. And I'm going to say a word that would sound very funny, with severity, because science teaches us, science has a certain severity that you bring. You have to work hard. It's not a Twitter. It's not a message. It's not Instagram. It's not instant. Science teaches you. Science brings with it hard discipline, hard work. That's what I call severity. It's serious. You take your work seriously. It's not just this, you're in the bathroom and you just got it and it's all terrific, and that moment of revelation. There's a lot of a puzzlement, a lot of dark moments that come. So if it's a series like the baby series, that they took a lot of care, they did a lot of research, we've been interacting and corresponding for months. I sent them papers, they read, they had very good questions, and they came and they showed experiments, and we had, let's say they wanted to show the father's brain, so we invited fathers and they showed the experiment and they showed, or the point is for men that the biology of fatherhood is not exactly that like the biology of motherhood. Mothers, um, their body and their brain changes by being pregnant, by carrying a baby in your body, nourishing it, helping it develop, and then the tremendous changes that occur during birth and then nursing. Fathers don't go through these things. So the biology of fatherhood, and also you have to think that in the natural world, only 3% or 3 to 5% of mammalian species have paternal care, have active fatherhood. Most species, fathers, sperm, and that's it. No taking care of infants. So in nature and throughout primate evolution, fatherhood and across human history, fatherhood took a lot of forms. Motherhood is pretty uniform in many ways across history, across culture, and also across primate evolution. There is maternal behavior, there is maternal lactation, there is internal gestation, and then there is the process of childbirth, all marked by rush of oxytocin. Fathers, it is top down behavior based. What it means is that you can be a father and fatherhood would get by you and would not change you at all. You'd be a high-tech dad. You'll see your kid for a couple of hours in the weekend while you're tweeting on your phone or while you're doing some work. And if, as a father, you're not going to invest meaningfully in childcare, this whole wonderful change that accompanies parenting will get you by. It's not going to happen for you. And for fathers, involved fathers can reorganize their brain and their oxytocin and their biology as much as mothers, but they have to work hard. They have to be involved. What you learn when you are a clinician or researcher like me is that there are no title. Some high-tech fathers can be absolutely magnificent, and even if they work many hours, they find time in the day to connect with their child, and they have this synchrony. And there are some gay fathers that could be not as sensitive. Okay, so let's talk about a father who assumes a primary caregiving role to the baby. Let's say in our model, we had the two gay men who had the baby by surrogacy, and there were no mothers. They had the baby from day one, and the mothers were not in the picture. And a father who, for whatever reason, high-tech or not high-tech, is not invested in childcare. The child doesn't mean, being a father is not that meaningful for his sense of self, and is not spending too much time with a baby, particularly not spending time with a baby alone. You know, sometimes on the weekend, on Sunday, he will take the family to the park. He'll sit in the park and talk with his friends. But we're talking about a father-infant time that is just their time when the father is alone with a baby. So if a father is involved with the baby, those interaction, that mental commitment, that sense that fatherhood is the most important thing that happens to my sense of self and identity and who I want to be, those will reorganize the father's brain to an extent, to the extent, here is, you get what you pay for. The more the father is invested, and it's also important that father engages in, the greater the variety of what the father does matters. So it's not just the father spend, let's say, twice a week with the child, they go to the park and that's it. But it's important the range of tasks for fathers. So the father diapers, and the father feeds, and the father gets up at night, and the father does doctor visits, and the father does play in the park, and the father does teaching or all kinds of, and the father takes to the babysitter and from the babysitter. The more the father is involved, the more reorganization, which mothers get through pregnancy. Fathers can have it through caregiving. So it's not, if you are a father, you can take any model on the continuum, it's there in evolution. You can be a father that barely sees the kids and nothing would happen to your brain. And you could be that primary caregiving dad that it's really meaningful. And then your brain and your sense of self and your mind and your personality will be altered by that experience. And it's really amazing how the involved dad, which is basically in the last 2 or 3 decades, it's not a very long in history, has really altered not only the brain of fathers, but also society in general. There is a new model of how you are a boss, and there is a new model of how you judge in court, and there is a new model for how family roles are shared. Okay, we still have long to go, but we see that when men become paternal and they become synchronous and they become attending to that synchrony, that ebb and flow, that give and take, what that other person is thinking, what that other person is feeling. How can I accommodate?
Quantity and variety, no? Is not quantity or
Both. Maternal depression is a very, very common condition. It happens a lot. Right now, when we look at statistics, it's about 1 of 6 women, not that would be a little bit depressed after a baby is born. Oh, I didn't sleep the whole night. Oh, I can't get into my pants. Oh, I don't know how to organize my day. The whole day gone and I didn't do anything. That nearly everybody has. Okay, these maternal blues, 85% of women will experience it. We're talking about depression that that is severe, that is a psychiatric depression that lasts for a longer period and is severe in its feeling and symptoms. That there is 2 or 3 weeks when mothers are totally depressed and they can be diagnosed as having depression. This is common, and it's becoming more and more common as women are expecting more of themselves. Okay, women nowadays expect themselves to do terrific on their career and be the most wonderful mom while wearing a size 2 pants 3 weeks after they gave birth. So the expectation women have of themselves are basically no other generation in human evolution has expected that much of themselves. At the same time, we no longer, in the last 3 or 4 generations, with what happened to with the industrial revolution and with modernization, we don't live in family units anymore, or at least most modern women don't live with their family of origin. So the way humans used to parent, the way mothers were throughout human evolution, was that they were in the context of extended families where they could be helped by their mother and by their aunts and by their little sisters. And women were raising infants together in with a group of women. And this is the most natural and the most healthy way to raise infants, where you have a lot of emotional support and a lot of physical support.
We
The
need a
family,
village to grow a child.
it takes a village, right, right. And in fact, this is the way it was until, let's say, 50, 100 years ago. So this is how our brain developed. So with tremendous expectation to be a good mother and nearly no support system, women are really having it very, very hard. So depression really soars. And I think also there is more and more outing of depression. So if I would say 30, 40, 50 years ago, women that felt depressed were embarrassed to say it because, you had a healthy child. So it's important to say that depression is a common condition. And if you have it, it's no shame, but get help. It's important to get help. It could be helped. And it could be helped with relatively a brief period of time. As you know, we have an intervention for depression where we go to the homes because depressed mothers have a very hard time getting themselves organized and coming to a clinic or a lab. So we go to their homes. I think this is extremely helpful to the mothers. And within 8 sessions, we see tremendous improvement. So we found that when the mother is continuously depressed, meaning that she's really depressed throughout the child's early years, then it has a long-term effect on the child's brain that we see it not only in preschool, but we see it in adolescence. So that the child's brain, the brain basis of attachment and empathy, is less organized for children who grew up in the context of maternal depression. But we're talking here about severe maternal depression that did not remit and was the child experienced it throughout infancy. So when mothers are depressed, there are long-term effects, but the long-term effect depend on how long the mother was depressed. We also saw that when the mother is depressed, but the father is engaged, so then this really helps mitigate not all the consequences, but many.
There is some visible effect for the mother in the behavior in infancy or preschool that help her to understand the possibility to this effect, the long-term effect.
So if a mother sees that, the first thing that you have to realize is whether you enjoy interacting with your child. So a woman can, that is it releasing dopamine and oxytocin in your brain or not? Are you looking forward? Is it the most rewarding? You smell the baby, you love the baby, you kiss the baby, you can't wait to be with the baby. You don't feel that ever. I mean, no mother feels that all the time. The baby's gonna wake up at 2 a.m. You're not gonna feel thrilled. But you have to have it with a small baby at least once a day or at least once every other day, that you're really enjoying the moments of interaction with a child. If you're not, that's one signal. When you look at depressed mothers, you see that naturally they don't touch the kid. There's not a lot of when you even ask them to when you go to the house and you ask mothers to interact with the baby, they don't even put the baby close to them that they could accidentally touch the baby. They sit far. So there's not a lot of that physical proximity and touch and hugging. Actually, in the intervention, this is part of what we teach mothers to do, because they're not aware of how important it is, and they're not aware of the long-term consequences, because the child's oxytocin system is being built in that during these first few months. So if the kid is not going to be hugged and held close and touched, the oxytocin system of the baby will not be developing properly.
It's a kind of automatic reaction. The mother maybe is not feel comfortable to touch the baby, but we will start with this kind of touch, and the nature go on.
Right. So we teach them to touch, and we tell them, even if you don't feel it, do it. And then within a week or so, they begin to love it, because when you touch, you release oxytocin. The baby releases oxytocin. You're going to have more pleasant face-to-face interaction. There'll be more babbling, more laughing, more gaze. Okay. And then you're going to want, that's going to trigger your dopamine, because oxytocin and dopamine are there in the same neuron in your striatum. They are sitting on the same neuron. So everything is going to get released, and your brain is in a very, very plastic period, because the time after childbirth is a time when the brain reorganizes. So the more you do these things, you're going to activate your brain. It's almost like writing your brain, making your brain right, or realigning your brain. And then the other behaviors is looking at your baby, sharing gaze with your baby, laughing with exaggerated expression, big smile, big expression. That's what kids perceive. Vocalization, those high pitch, beautiful sing song, singing, finger cooing, not obviously overstimulating a tired child, but in a synchronous way. Video feedback, just to tell the audience, is infant intervention, where you take videotape of the mother infant interaction and various types of interaction, and then you show it to the mother for a specific purpose, and each intervention uses the video for a specific interaction. So I think it's like feedback in any intervention. When you see yourself, by the way, our intervention, when we show mothers the video, we make a big effort to circle in the period where there was good mothering and connection between the mother and the infant. And when you videotape 10-15 minutes, even with the depressed moms, you will find that one episode where there was this connection between the mother and the child. And we use it to show her what it is, what the consequences. You can ask the mother how she feels about herself and her baby. You can show the mother how much her baby is looking to connect with her, because babies naturally look for connection with a mom. It's the most important food their brain requires. They need that. So they come equipped, with cute face, and they automatically direct their gaze to human face. This is what they select. So infants will, if a mother gives a child an opportunity to engage, the child will biologically connect to her. And then seeing that, imagine that a depressed mom is usually a very self-critical mom. And she always says, I'm no good, I'm a bad mom, I am not doing it right, I can't do it, leading to the erroneous conclusion that my baby will be better off without me. You see that all the time when you go a little deeper into, I failed my baby, I'm a bad mom, I better leave altogether and my baby will be better off. And when you see these videos and you see her interacting with the child, and you see the child looking for signals from the mom, okay? Mother sees that she is the one. She is the mother. She is the person that infant is looking to connect with. The kid wants her. It's in her hand. There's something very empowering about video feedback that you can get from just talking.
So we can add more reality, more behavior feedback than traditional infant observation. Maybe.
I would say that it has to be done by professionals, and it has to be done with care, and it has to be done by people who know what they're doing and have knowledge and experience and training in infant parent psychotherapy. But if all is, because sometimes putting something in your face without proper knowledge can be do more harm than good. Okay. Oh, I see. I was awful and it's bad. I don't want to see that infant anymore, etc. So I'm saying video feedback because it's like laser operation for eye surgery. It's a very potent tool, but it has to be treated with severity, with a lot of caution, and only in the context of professionals who know what they're doing. But then I think it could be a good tool.
Started with the feedback. The first important aspect to know was the look the better behavior. Start from the good behavior of the mother. 1 microsecond, but please give her this sense of mastery, of joining this second. And it's incredible. In 1 second on video, you can see this little moment of joy, as you saw. They open to many, many other change in the relationship.
This is the period when, in terms of brain, this is the period when the brain does its utmost growth, its utmost extrauterine growth, where all the wiring and the connection are not all, but much of the wiring and connections will be established. So there is it's a period of tremendous brain growth and connectivity that will not be repeated in the person's life ever in terms. It is also the period where there is the most learning. It's almost like related to the brain growth. Infants learn social behavior. Infants learn feeling. Infants learn language, to use language. Infants learn the cultural customs and rituals of their family. Infants learn not only the intimacy of the parent child relationship, but by the time you're 3, you also learn how to be in the family, how to be with your siblings, how to be with your friends. By the time you are 3, kids already have best friends, selective attachment. There's a tremendous amount of learning in terms of executive function, a huge amount of regulatory learning, both regulating affect, waiting, um, persistence, frustration tolerance, the way the brain resolves these very crucial milestone, and how much provision and what is the affect that surrounds. Is a child living in a place of calm when in the main mother and father are in a good relationship, the family is in a relatively stable condition, there is attention from the mother, attention from the father, love all around, a stable family? That's one story. Okay, so then the oxytocin and cortisol ratio can go more to the calm and more to the love. But on the other hand, if you live in a situation of violence, in a situation of housing insecurity, you don't know where you're going to live tomorrow. You are with a single mom without any help, that's constantly worries, works hard, and there is no stimulation for development. Children are being placed in front of a television and are not getting any stimulation. Those experiences will shape the brain forever.
And let me ask you, if I understand your research, you point out the best, the more important 9 month and period of the best chance to shape the brain of the baby, if I understand.
Our work, because we focus on the foundation of affiliative bond, an attachment relationship, the biology basis of love, we look for the first 9 months because this is the time before children learn spoken language. Okay? This is a time when we learn to communicate in ways that are different from and provide the foundation for spoken language. Those 9 months are the 9 months that you learn whatever I said, the rule, the energy, the synchrony, the safety, the resourcefulness that transpire between two humans during interaction before you can give it words. So this lays the foundation, and a lot of the systems we're spoken about, the oxytocin system takes the first maturation, the social brain undergoes very rapid maturation, both in terms of volume and connectivity. This entire temporal or parietal temporal area between, like in the second 6 months, undergoes very massive maturation. So this is the time when we are, I would say, woven into the human fabric. The infant is ushered into the social world before the infant can communicate verbally. And this is a very important time point. This is why we target. We would not want mothers to be depressed throughout this 9 months, and we target our intervention for 3 to 9 months.
There isn't time for the baby. We have time to work with the big picture of the mind of the mothers, long psychotherapy. We have time for this. Now we haven't time in this period,
Right.
if I understand.
I would first have to um, to to state in the outset that we have not studied a pregnant mother's brain. I would not want to put pregnant mothers in the magnet. And we haven't had a study that looks into the brain during pregnancy. Okay. We did have research that measures mothers' hormones during pregnancy, particularly oxytocin. And we know that oxytocin, the, the process, and we know that from research in rodents, that the process that triggers the organization of the maternal brain to pregnancy is the rush of oxytocin and prolactin in the hypothalamus, where the oxytocin factory, there is a small nucleus that's called medial preoptic area. Okay, and this is critical for motherhood. And when a dam gets pregnant, this area begins to send projection, oxytocin, increase oxytocin receptivity, receptors for oxytocin, and send projection to other areas, like to the amygdala, to sensitize the mother's worry about her infant, and to the dopamine, subcortical dopamine, like the VTA, striatum, to sensitize mother's extreme reward. So we know that during pregnancy, there are oxytocin mediated change. There is increase in oxytocin, and this leads to reorganization of the maternal brain to orient mothers both to the tremendous joys of motherhood and to the worries that come with motherhood. That, the minute you have a child, you don't really sleep ever. You always worry, even if your child is 30 and doesn't live with you anymore. The minute you have a child, that is gone. That kind of oblivion is gone. You're constantly worried about your child, particularly when that child is a baby. So all this reorganization that are ancient, rodents have it, primates have it, humans have it. They happen during pregnancy in preparation for the birth, and they are triggered by the tremendous elevation of oxytocin. And we showed that also in human there is a very big elevation of oxytocin level already at the beginning of pregnancy. They stay high, and they predict the type of attachment the mother will have with her child. So if mothers during pregnancy increased oxytocin level, she would be more synchronous in terms of her behavior, and in terms of her mental state, she would be more minded to the child. I can speak only about kangaroo care for premature infants. Okay, I can speak about kangaroo care for full-term infants. And our kangaroo care for preterm infants was conducted on the period children need, infants need, when they're born, they're in the mother's, infants need to feel connected to the mother's body. Rat babies need it, monkey babies need it, elephant babies need it, sheep baby need it, we need it. And the mother's body is a source of a lot of terrific provisions that researchers starting in Myronhofer in the 60s showed us how each component of the mother's body, the mother's smell and the mother's body heat and the mother's movement and the mother's heart rate, etc., etc., and the mother's licking. So being close to the mother's body organizes your brain, gives your brain the final organization. Babies are born with immature brain.
It's very important for preterm baby, and
Right. Could be important for other babies, but the critical important for preemies is that not only the brain of the preemie is less mature, but the baby is taken away, is put in an incubator, and he's not even getting all the important provisions from the mother's body to organize and mature the brain. So kangaroo care, infants are placed in incubator because they can't thermoregulate. They can't maintain their body heat. And the only way a preemie baby can maintain his or her body heat is by being in a skin to skin contact with the mother. So this is the only way for that baby who needs, even more needs, the mother's physical presence, contact with the mother's body. Now, a baby that's born unterm and the mother is able to hold the baby. Do they need to do kangaroo care, or it's sufficient that the baby is close to the mother and is held by the mother? And, for years and years in different tribes, in traditional societies, mother carry the baby here or in the back. So is it important skin to skin? I don't know. One possibility is that this child will learn to shut down, to shut down and not desire interactions. If interactions are so intrusive, I don't want them. So this kid will grow into withdrawn person that doesn't seek relationship and doesn't enjoy them. Another effect will be on the stress response. Those children are usually, their stress response overworks, their cortisol production, the entire amygdala response. Children growing up with intrusive mothers usually have very active or overactive stress response. And I would say the other effect that we see is that children of anxious mothers become disruptive because the mother doesn't regulate the child, co-regulate the child through interaction. So the kids become unable to self-regulate and becomes wild and becomes, so you can either become withdrawn from an intrusive mom, or you can be hyper anxious, disruptive, and unable to self regulate.
And for example, in kindergarten, you can see a very withdrawn infant, no, toddler, and the teacher say, "Oh, what a lovely child, what a lovely child," and you can see a disruptive child, very hyperactive, maybe too much socialized, maybe.
Right. Sometimes. But we have to be very careful that when we have a very quiet and withdrawn child, sometimes teachers like them. But those are children at very high risk because they're avoidant and they may be developing an avoidant pattern of behavior, which means that they learn not to need people. Who need people are the luckiest people in the world. They learn not to need relationships. And so we need to pay attention to children who are avoidant, even though it may be very easy for a teacher or a kindergarten caretaker to. The question of temperament and relationship, with temperament and attachment, is a big one. But you know children of all temperament need to find a way to establish relationships and stay in relationship, because the hazard of not being in relationship is huge. Social loneliness and social isolation is as bad as cigarettes, is as bad as cancer, is as bad as heart attack. It's hazardous to your health. And the pandemic really showed us it's bad for our mental health, and it's bad for our immune system, and it's bad for our physical. So even if you have a child that needs more quiet, that needs time to be alone, you need to help that child find ways to have meaningful relationship. Not everybody has to be a life of a party. Not everybody has to have 1,000 friends, but you have to help your child to, yes, be able to be in a few meaningful relationships. And the same for the disruptive child. Okay, just going out and having good time, you still as a parent need to help that child form intimate relationships. Play with joy, play with full attention to the child, and play looking for the signal, follow the child, look for the signals of the child. But there was this one study that we did it was published in 2010, and we realized that when we asked parents to play with their infants and use whatever touch, play with your infants, including touch, and we left the parents for 15 minutes. So, two things we learned is that mothers use more affectionate touch, hugging, kissing, caressing, poking, holding close to you. Fathers used a little bit of a different type of touch, but also affectionate, which was more stimulatory, pulling, directing, throwing in the air. But we saw that when parents provided a lot of touch, at least 2/3 of the time, and then the duration of each contact was at least 60 seconds, both the parent and the infant increased their oxytocin level. By the way, they increased it in tandem. That if the parent increased by a lot, not exactly the same amount, but if the parent increased by a lot, the infant increased by a lot. If the parent increased, and if the parent just interacted with a child without touch, without using the touch, even though it was specifically required in the experiment. So oxytocin didn't increase for parent and touch. And then we did a couple of follow-up studies, and we saw that when you provide affectionate touch within loving relationship of a duration that lasts at least 60 seconds, there is a chance that there will be synchronized increase or synchronized release of oxytocin from both parties. So I take it the message to parent is hug and touch some more and hug some. I don't think Italian parents need to be told that because there are different cultures with different touching. Italians touch a lot, I think, or at least from my visits to your country, people are more free with personal space and physical intimacy. They hug nicely, but the message to parent is always, always, some contacts are intrusive. Sometimes the infant is not ready. You have to be mindful that you touch is synchronous, that you touch is responsive to what the child needs at this. If the child is busy with performing a task or learning something or exploring something, giving him a big hug wouldn't be appropriate.